It was a quiet Tuesday morning in the worn-down neighborhood of East Willow, where life moved slowly and the air carried a tinge of dust and survival. The streets hummed with the sounds of everyday struggles, mothers haggling at corner stalls, children kicking a half-deflated ball down an alley, and the distant clatter of someone hammering a loose window shutter back in place. Amid all this stood Maria Espinosa, a woman in her early 60s wrapped in a threadbare shawl, pushing a rusty cart filled with recyclables. Maria had lived in East Willow for most of her life. Once, she'd had a husband and a modest tailoring shop, but life, merciless and unpredictable, had taken both. Her husband had passed away from an illness they couldn't afford to treat, and the shop was gone with the rent she could no longer pay. Yet Maria never allowed bitterness to root in her heart. She lived simply with dignity and kindness stitched into every action. She made just enough collecting cans and bottles to buy rice, beans, and sometimes a small piece of meat from the market. And every Sunday, without fail, she cooked a large pot of food and handed out meals to anyone hungrier than herself. On this Tuesday morning, something unusual caught her eye. As she turned a corner near the dilapidated park, she saw a little girl sitting alone on a bench, her knees tucked into her chest, golden curls cascading over her pink hoodie. Her cheeks were stained with tears, and she clutched a small plush rabbit tightly. Maria's heart clenched. She glanced around. No parents, no guardians, just the girl, small and frightened, lost in a place where bad things could easily happen to the unprotected. Maria approached slowly, her soft-soled shoes making barely a sound. "Hola, niña," she said gently. "Are you okay?" The girl didn't answer immediately, her eyes a striking green filled with tears anew. I can't find my daddy," she whispered. Maria knelt in front of her, ignoring the groan of her knees. "Don't be scared, sweetheart. We'll find him. What's your name?" "Emily." "Well, Emily," Maria said with a warm smile, "my name is Maria. You can come with me. We'll get you something to eat and figure things out, okay?" Emily hesitated, then nodded. Her small hand slipped into Maria's rough, weathered one. Back in her tiny apartment, Maria served Emily the last of her rice and beans and gave her a glass of milk, reserved for rare treats or sick neighbors. She wrapped Emily in a thicker sweater and tried to call the local police station from her old landline, but the line was dead again, as it often was. Her phone hadn't worked for months. "Do you know your father's number?" she asked Emily. Emily shook her head. "He always tells me just to ask someone for help if I get lost. But I didn't mean to get lost. I was following a puppy." Maria didn't pry. She simply nodded, tucking a loose strand of hair behind the girl's ear. That night, Emily slept on Maria's bed while Maria rested on a thin blanket near the radiator. It was the coldest night of the week, and Maria shivered through the darkness, but she didn't move. She stayed close, just in case Emily had a nightmare. By morning, news of a missing child had begun to ripple through the city. Flyers with Emily's face, bright, smiling, joyful, were posted in coffee shops and convenience stores. Maria hadn't seen them. She didn't own a TV, and she rarely stopped long enough to read bulletin boards. Her only thought was to walk, with Emily, to the nearest police station once it opened. But fate had another plan. As Maria and Emily walked down a main street the next morning, a sleek black car screeched to a halt in front of them. Out burst a tall man in a tailored suit, his face pale, panicked, and streaked with tears. "Emily!" he cried. "Daddy!" The girl ran into his arms and he scooped her up, holding her as if she were made of glass. He kissed her forehead again, and again, muttering thanks to the sky, to the earth, then finally to Maria. "You found her, you kept her safe?" Maria gave a small smile. She was alone. "I couldn't just leave her." He looked at Maria then, truly looked at her. Her lined face, her thin frame, the patched sweater. "I don't even know how to thank you," he said, voice trembling. I'm Matthew Caldwell." The name meant nothing to Maria, but to nearly everyone else in the city, it was synonymous with power, wealth, and influence. Caldwell Industries, Caldwell Real Estate, Caldwell Charities. It was all him. A billionaire, and not just in the papers. A real one. "I'd like to give you something," he said. Maria shook her head immediately. No, I didn't do this for anything. She's a child. Children need protecting." His eyes filled again, but this time with something more than gratitude, humility. "Please, at least let me give you a ride home." Maria hesitated, then nodded. That evening, the story of a poor woman saving a billionaire's daughter was all over the news. But Maria had no idea. She sat at her small kitchen table, sipping tea made from reused leaves, thinking only about Emily and how relieved she was that she was safe. The next day, her life changed forever. She was sweeping the sidewalk when a luxury car stopped in front of her building. Out stepped a woman in an elegant coat, followed by Matthew Caldwell. "Maria," he greeted her warmly. "This is my wife, Evelyn. We'd like to speak with you." She invited them in, embarrassed by her humble home, but they didn't seem to notice. Instead, they handed her an envelope. Inside was a deed to a new apartment, fully paid for, and a job offer at a Caldwell-funded community center. "I told you I didn't do it for anything," she said, her voice cracking. Matthew reached out and took her hand gently. "And that's exactly why you deserve everything." Tears welled in Maria's eyes. For the first time in years, they weren't born of grief or hardship, but hope. The weeks that followed brought even more surprises. The media coverage had touched hearts all across the country. Donations poured into the community center. Volunteers signed up in record numbers. Inspired by Maria's story, a nationwide campaign was launched to recognize everyday heroes, those who gave not for reward, but because it was right. One afternoon, a journalist asked Maria, "Why did you help her? Didn't you think it might be dangerous or a trap?" Maria looked at her with a mixture of surprise and sadness. "If we start looking at people with suspicion instead of compassion, then what kind of world are we building?" That little girl was scared. That was all I needed to see. It wasn't a grand philosophy, it wasn't a planned movement, it was simple humanity. And somehow it moved mountains. Years later, Emily Caldwell would grow up to speak at global forums about kindness. She'd often tell the story of the old woman who gave her warmth when the world felt cold, who shared food when her own stomach was empty, and who expected nothing in return. Maria never changed much. She accepted the new apartment, helped run the community kitchen, and spent her Sundays exactly the same, feeding those who needed it most. When she passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 78, thousands gathered to honor her. A park was named after her. A mural was painted showing her holding Emily's hand, and on a plaque beneath it were words spoken once, quietly, by the woman who never wanted recognition. "We don't need to be rich to change the world. We just need to care." And somehow those words echoed far beyond East Willow, reminding millions that true power lies not in wealth, but in kindness. And the smallest acts of love can create the greatest ripples of change.